Thinking Tactically is a paid program. The information provided is not legal advice and should not be used in lieu of legal counsel. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of West Coast Armory North or this station.
Every day, we hear stories of innocent people who are the victims of violent crimes. Do you want to leave your personal defense up to someone else? Or take the initiative and be responsible and prepared to defend yourself and your family? If you answered yes, this is the show for you. Thinking Tactically, personal security for today's world. And now, here are your hosts, John Holshin and Kevin Smith.
Good morning and welcome to Thinking Tactically, personal security for today's world. I'm Kevin Smith.
And I'm John Holshin.
Thank you for joining us this week. Today's episode is going to be focusing a lot on how to secure your home and what types of steps can you take to not just have your plan, but also what type of equipment with doors, windows, security systems, and all of that as we try to help you get better prepared for securing your home. We're going to be joined in studio by a special guest. The owner of Fortified Authority, Derek Dotson, is going to be here. First off, though, we're going to start off with some lessons from the news. John, what do you got for us this week?
So I've got a series of stories here that all have a consistent theme that will become apparent as we go along. The first one comes out of Loudoun County, Virginia. A sheriff's deputy was up getting ready for work early in the morning, 3:30 a.m. His home alarm system went off indicating that there was a prowler around his garage area. He armed himself. He moved to investigate. He heard noises coming from the area. As he approached, a dark shadow separated, began moving rapidly toward him. He was fearful and fired a shot, striking this unknown person at the time in the torso. Turned out that the unknown person was his 16-year-old daughter who had snuck out of the house and was trying to sneak back in. In Michigan, there was a young woman involved in a car accident, suffered a head injury, and she wandered up to a house, probably trying to get help. And again, the homeowner perceived that they were in danger and fatally shot her. In Georgia, an elderly man suffering from Alzheimer's wandered onto a person's property, rang the doorbell, repeatedly attempted to open various doors. At some point, the homeowner opened the door, interacted with the man, and fatally shot him. In Wisconsin, we have a young man attending a party at the next-door neighbor's house. A lot of noise, underage drinking. A couple people called complaints into law enforcement. As law enforcement arrived, the kids scattered, and this young man took refuge, hiding out on the enclosed front porch of the neighboring property. And the homeowner, believing that this was a attempted burglary, fatally shot him. In Florida, a woman fatally shot her daughter. She woke up hearing a noise and seeing a figure coming towards her rapidly. She fired a single round which struck her daughter in the chest, fatally shooting her. In Ohio, a father shot and killed his teenage son when early in the morning his son had left for school, and as the father was preparing to go to work, he heard noises in the basement. He armed himself and moved to investigate. A shadow in the basement moved rapidly toward him, and he fired a shot which was fatal to his son. In Houston, Texas, a man searching his house, burglar alarm had gone off. He worked nearby. He went home to see what the alarm was about. He found an open door. He began searching his house after arming himself. And as he went into his daughter's room, there was a rapid movement in her closet, which startled him, and he fired a single shot. And I think you're seeing the pattern here. It was, in fact, his daughter who was skipping school. A bunch of tragic situations. And I want to preface this. These are over about a 3-year period. This does not happen regularly, but it happens often enough. It happens often enough that we need to think about this. I talk to people all the time about their home security and home defense planning. In this segment, we're going to talk about some other aspects of home security, but all of these are examples, in my opinion, of poor tactics and poor decision-making, putting people in positions where they felt they had to make a split-second decision whether to fire or not to fire. And we could get into any one of these and talk about all the things wrong. But what's consistent here, and when I train people, what I see their untrained behavior is often to arm themselves and move to investigate. When they move to investigate, they close the gap with this unknown circumstance, this unknown person, to the point that they have no reactionary gap. If it was a bad guy and they didn't respond quickly, they might not survive the outcome. The point here is that your planning needs to be focused around giving yourself time to make assessments. I deal with people who go, if they're in my house and they don't belong in my house, then I don't need any more assessment than that. I don't need to, they get what's coming to them. Really? All these people in these stories that I just relayed to you, none of them had anything coming to them. They were all accidental or mistaken identity shootings. You've got to give yourself time to figure out what's going on. Even if you could say, I have no relatives, I've got no kids that are going to skip school, I have no relatives that have keys. Do you really want to shoot the old guy that's suffering from Alzheimer's? Do you really want to shoot the kid that's trying to hide from the cops next door because he was drinking underage? Do you really want to shoot the young woman that has a head injury from a car accident and is confused and is just trying to get help? Of course you don't. It's understandable how they got into positions where they had to make split-second decisions, but it is not acceptable that they didn't have the knowledge to plan the situation better than that so that they avoid those situations. What we want to increase the gap between ourselves and problems so that we don't fall into this situation where we're making split-second decisions that you may regret for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where it's about planning so that you only have to use deadly force, or those situations when it's absolutely necessary, when you're actually in danger of harm, not wanting to have these accidents where, you can't come back from shooting a family member.
Exactly.
It's something that I'm certain will definitely affect that person's life for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, when we talk about firearms accidents, I put them into two categories. There are those that change my day. They may embarrass me as a firearms instructor if I have a negligent discharge or I have something not go the way it should through my lack of attention to detail. That's one level. The others are situations that change my life or someone else's life. And you have to apply good planning, good tactics to situations so that you can avoid those catastrophic events.
Absolutely. It's definitely, you're looking to better serve yourself, better protect yourself, better protect your family, not to have to live with negative consequences or horrible tragedies for the rest of your life. We're going to take a quick break here. And remember, if you want to email us your questions or any topics you want to hear about, email us at thinkingtactically@gmail.com. All right, we're going to be right back. You're listening to Thinking Tactically right here on Fox Sports 1380.
You're listening to Thinking Tactically, personal security for today's world. Brought to you in part by West Coast Armory North, providing expert personalized service to each individual client. For more information, log on to westcoastarmorynorth.com. Insights Training Center is locally owned and nationally recognized and offers the most complete self-defense, firearms, and tactical training available to civilians and private organizations, law enforcement, and military. In business for over 20 years, they've taught more than 20,000 private citizens, law enforcement officers, instructors, SWAT teams, corrections personnel, security officers, and military personnel, offering classes from basic self-defense and handgun safety to advanced tactic classes and everything in between. Insights Training Center has a course for you you. Their professional instructors come from highly specialized and thorough backgrounds in law enforcement, military special operations, and the private sector. Visit InsidesTraining.com for a complete list of upcoming classes.
Every day, there are men and women of our armed forces dealing with illness and injuries, and their families are unable to be by their side. Fisher House works to get the families of injured military members to their soldiers during these difficult times. They provide housing and transportation to help make certain our soldiers are not alone. Visit fisherhouse.org to see how you can make a difference in the lives of the brave men and women of our armed forces that have sacrificed so much for us. Those of us at Thinking Tactically and West Coast Armory North are proud to support Fisher House.
Maybe you've heard it before. Let's go fishing, or let's go for a boat ride. Being prepared by taking educational classes geared towards boaters and carrying necessary safety equipment can be the difference between catastrophe and minor inconvenience while boating. The Everett Sail and Power Squadron reminds you that now is the time to ready yourself and your boat for those long, enjoyable, and safe days on the water. For more information on safe boating, visit usps.org.
The Northwest Women's Shooting Network is a comprehensive resource in person and online for all women's shooting needs and questions. Everything from basic education to continuing education, we are here to help you find and buy the right gun for you, get the proper skills for personal protection, and to create a welcome and safe environment to learn with other women. Coming from over 30 years of combined experience in the shooting industry, we are mothers, sisters, wives, and just plain awesome gals. In other words, just like you. Our commitment is to help you become an informed, skilled, confident woman. We are based out of West Coast Armory North in Everett, Washington, minutes north of Seattle. We offer a variety of events, seminars, training, and more. Already we have hosted a variety of events such as Kids Safety Day, Ladies Night Out, and shopping events, and we also hold regular women-only classes in addition to our Ladies Shooting Club and Ladies League. At the range, we have over 70 rental firearms for you to try before you buy, and every Thursday is Ladies Day. Find us at westcoastarmorynorth.com under the Women's Network tab and on Facebook at Northwest Women's Shooting Network.
Taking responsibility out of someone else's hands and putting it into yours. This is Thinking Tactically, personal security for today's world. And now, back to more of the show. Here are your hosts, John Holshan and Kevin Smith.
All right, welcome back to Thinking Tactically, Personal Security for Today's World. We're going to be joined in studio here in a few minutes by the owner of Fortify Authority, Derek Dotson, and he's going to be helping us to get a better idea of how to secure our homes and how to be best prepared for that. And while we wait for him to get here, we're going to answer a question that we had from the audience, which was, John, if you're looking for, if you have a gun for home defense, where should they keep it?
Absolutely. It's another great question. So if you have a gun as part of your home defense plan, obviously accessibility is one of the criteria. As we've mentioned in other shows, I believe that you have a responsibility to secure your firearms. So even my immediate home defense firearms are locked in a secure container. Now that's a quick access secure container. I just have to push a few buttons, turn a knob, and boom, it's in my hand. It takes less than 5 seconds. So the first thing to realize that even a firearm for home defense needs to be securely stored. Now the next thing is, where do we store it? Well, typically folks, worry about the burglary in the night type thing or the home invasion in the middle of the night. So, you're going to want to have it near where you sleep. Again, I don't recommend that it just be loose in your nightstand, even if I've had somebody tell me that, well, they keep it locked up during the day, but when they go to bed at night, they close their door, they lock their door, and they take the gun out of the gun safe and put it in the nightstand or on the nightstand or, God forbid, under their pillow. And the idea is that, well, I'm in a secured room, so it does need to be in a secure lock container. Okay, you could go that route, but the fact of the matter is you don't want the gun in your hand before you're awake. And I'm really comfortable with the idea that if I'm awake, it takes me 5 seconds, literally, to access the gun. And that can be time while I'm coming awake. If I'm not awake enough to know which buttons to push and how to get the gun in my hand, I'm not awake enough to have a gun in my hand. So I don't have the gun just laying next to the bed or whatever. I keep it in that lockbox. Now, if you have a large house and you think about if you're home a lot during the day and you want to have access to that home defense firearm, if you can afford to have multiple firearms, then the same thing. We look at another lockbox and we put it in a central location. Maybe the bedrooms are upstairs, so maybe we want this in a downstairs location. Not right at the door, because if somebody pushes their way in or kicks in the door is your first clue, you don't want them to be standing where your gun is. But obviously near enough to the door that if I go to answer the door thinking it's a delivery man and I find in fact it's a security issue, it's close enough that I can get to it. So I look at the home from that point of view and say, okay, what's kind of central from the downstairs, close to the door but not at the door, and then what type of lock box can I employ, whether it's inside a piece of furniture or a drawer or a closet, that sort of thing.
All right, John, that's some great advice there, and I really like the one about making sure that you're awake enough to handle a firearm and taking those extra steps to make sure that you're waking up fully before you put a dangerous weapon in your hands.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break here. When we return, we're going to be joined in studio by Derek Dotson, the owner of Fortify Authority, and we're going to be talking about how we can secure our homes in the best way to make sure that everything is safe and taken care of. So stay with us. You're listening to Thinking Tactically right here on Fox Sports 1380.
You're listening to Thinking Tactically, personal security for today's world. Brought to you in part by Insights Training Center, offering the most complete self-defense, firearms, and tactical training available to citizens, private organizations, law enforcement, and military. Online at insightstraining.com.
Want to help save Puget Sound? Try cutting back on the amount of lawn fertilizer you use. What's the connection? Most fertilizers contain herbicides and pesticides meant to kill weeds and lawn pests. However, applying too much or before a heavy rain means these chemicals might wash into local streams, where they kill plants and the good bugs that salmon depend on. These chemicals make their way to Puget Sound and do more damage. So check the weather before you apply. Cut back on the amount you use. You'll save time, money, and help Puget Sound. Remember, Puget Sound starts here.
The Northwest Women's Shooting Network is a comprehensive resource in person and online for all women's shooting needs and questions. Everything from basic education to continuing education, we're here to help you find and buy the right gun for you, get the proper skills for personal protection, and to create a welcome and safe environment to learn with other women. Coming from over 30 years of combined experience in the shooting industry, we are mothers, sisters, wives, and just plain awesome gals. In other words, just like you. Our commitment is to help you become an informed, skilled, confident woman. We are based out of West Coast Armory North in Everett, Washington, minutes north of Seattle. We offer a variety of events, seminars, training, and more. Already we have hosted a variety of events such as Kids Safety Day, Ladies Night Out, and shopping events, and we also hold regular women-only classes in addition to our Ladies Shooting Club and Ladies League. At the range, we have over 70 rental firearms for you to try before you buy, and every Thursday is Ladies Day. Find us at westcoastarmorynorth.com under the Women's Network tab and on Facebook at Northwest Women's Shooting Network.
The trauma of war does not end when the guns stop firing. Many servicemen and women who come home from war face life-changing issues. These issues can affect not only them, but their families and friends. If you or someone you know is struggling with PTSD, know you are not alone. Veterans Affairs has resources and information available to help our brave soldiers. Go to ptsd.va.gov to learn how they can help.
West Coast Armory North is known for its low prices and great customer service, but did you know we have training classes as well? In fact, we're introducing a new course, Handgun 101, designed with new and returning shooters in mind. Our Handgun 101 course is 3 hours long, covers handgun marksmanship, how to load, unload, and safely handle and fire a variety of handguns. All equipment is provided, and you'll leave with a free bronze membership to our range. All this for just $75. Sign up now on our website under the Classes tab at westcoastarmorynorth.com.
Welcome back to the radio show dedicated to information and education about defending yourself.
Thinking tactically, personal security for today's world.
Once again, here are your hosts, John Holshan and Kevin Smith.
All right, welcome back to Thinking Tactically, Personal Security for Today's World. We're now joined in studios by the owner of Fortified Authority, Derek Dotson. Welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Derek, why don't you give us a little bit of your background and explain a little bit of where you're coming from and what your expertise is.
So my expertise, well, I can start with the fact that I worked in law enforcement. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to work on the federal, state, and local levels of law enforcement. Everything from investigation to supervision to even most recently gang violence prevention initiatives. As far as my previous life before that, I've had the opportunity to live and up and down the East Coast in a lot of high crime metropolitan areas. With that, I've had the, relationships, whether they're friends or family members that have actually had a lot of experience when it comes down to experience in security issues, when it comes down to people breaking in homes or whatever else.
I got to interject there. Okay, Derek, I'm going to draw you out a little bit on that. Your experience. Fact of the matter is, you grew up in a bad part of town with a bunch of bad people around you. So your experience is not academic. Your experience before you were ever in law enforcement, you were around bad actors doing bad things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a whole other story. How you managed to not end up in that lifestyle. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, you bring that knowledge to first your law enforcement career and now to your security consulting, and it's invaluable because it's not academic for you. You actually understand how this stuff works.
Yeah, on a very personal level.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Even on that personal level, just seeing how these security issues actually affect people. When people are victims of a situation, I was always able to understand that a little bit better, I think, than most. Just understanding where that actually comes from, how people, the impact it is on their lives when they suffer through a break-in, or when they suffer through a loss, whether it be through some type of street violence, that type of situation. And so, good parenting really helped me as far as that. But there's I had some friends and family members that definitely pursued down the other path. I had one cousin that went down the road of dropping out of school and then pursuing a life in crime and went to prison. I went to college, and after that, being able to go into law enforcement, it was a good opportunity. But to be able to combine that knowledge, even at this point in life, I think it's been really good as far as career goes.
Absolutely. So, when did you start Fortified Authority?
I had started helping people fortify their homes. I would say about 8 years ago, I started helping people do that a little bit more. Uh-huh. And that came through working in law enforcement and watching SWAT teams hit doors and just seeing the ease of just kicking in a door and how easy that was. And seeing that, once we got done with everything, but at the end of the day, I come back and I look at that door and I'm like, wow, that was really easy. And when you look at it, it's pretty similar. The bad guys are doing the exact same thing. The difference between the law enforcement officers and the bad guys when it comes down to home breaches or home invasions is a warrant. It's pretty much the same thing, right? So you look at it, they kick in the door, they point guns at you, they tie you up, and they take your stuff. At the end of the day, it's pretty much the same thing.
All right. So you've taken that experience, that motivation, and now you're full-time helping people fortify their homes and work environments.
Absolutely.
Where do you start with that? How do you conceptualize what needs to be done? I mean, there's lots of products out there. There's lots of ideas. But like anything else, I'm sure you want to go about it with some kind of plan.
Absolutely. The thing that I focus more on is keeping the bad guy out. That's the first thing I really think about. I think there's a lot of misconception, and that's usually where I start with people because of the questions I normally get. Right from the beginning, they experience something bad, and they say, well, I need to get an alarm. And that's a lot of the product information that's out there. It's a lot of misconception, or I need to get a lock. And if I put this lock on the door, it's going to make all the difference. And it doesn't. All right. It's a lot of, the misconception that's there is it's really a false sense of security. Right. So, they buy the lock and the wife looks at the husband, honey, did you lock the door? And he says, yes, I locked the door. And then they fall into their slumber and they're safe for the rest of the night. And that's not always the case. Right. The thing is that you really have to look at the fact that there's more to it than just the product. Having the product is great. A lot of the products are really good, but the alarms are great. The locks are great. But when you combine that knowledge with actually having a plan, knowing what to do in the case of the emergency, and knowing how to plan, even learning a little bit of tactics at that point, I think is really good for most people to be able to really take full advantage of their investment.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the product side, so you said number one is keep the bad guys out. Where do you start with that process? You mentioned doors. I'm sure you're going to talk about windows too. What's necessary? Where should people start thinking about that?
Well, when we look at the avenues of access, how people actually get in, and a lot of the time, depending on the area in the country, the time of year. It really depends on where people are going to decide to breach a residence or a home. So we start there, and at the time that I'm actually doing the assessment, I'm taking a hard look around, depending on the type of residence. It could be a townhome, it could be a single family residence, it could be actually a larger style home, a few thousand square feet. At the end of the day, it's people that actually have to how they actually get into the home. So I look at that, and my main thing is all right, I want to make sure that people do not get in, and I look at the doors. I look at not just the door, I look at the door as an entire unit. Some people just look at it as a lock. They look at it as the door, the actual slab. I'm looking at the frame, the lock, the door, everything as one unit, right? And that's the idea, to really try to keep people out, is to be able to look at that as a unit. Looking at windows, that's really one of the softest places to get into a home. It's just glass. And so looking at the glass, how do we make that stronger? And there are products for that, security film, for instance, for what it does, and the low cost of what it is for the actual product. I really believe that everyone should be using it. It really just
That's
makes
the
more
security
sense.
film on the windows?
The security film. Yeah. And it was actually used for hurricane resistance. That's what it was actually used for. For instance, like you think about places in Florida, people put up the boards over their windows to stop the debris that's flying at 90, 100 miles an hour that's coming through the glass, and they hit people in the home and it kills them. All right. People see them boarding up the windows just thinking that they're protecting the glass. They're trying to protect the people in the home. And so what the security film actually does is it provides that level of resistance. So when you have that debris that's flying at 90 or 100 miles an hour, it hits the film, it hits the glass in the film that's adhered to the glass. The film is adhered to the glass. And at that point, it doesn't go all the way through. It breaks. Sometimes it might flex, depending on the type of impact. And at that point in time, it's still remaining intact, and the debris hasn't flown through the window. Hurricane resistance. So if someone is actually taking a bat or a crowbar to that window, you would have more of an opportunity to buy that time. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm really trying to do. So if you think about someone hitting that glass with a crowbar or a bat, or a rock even.
That's much like that debris from the hurricane.
Absolutely. And so if you can keep someone out, the debris from flying at that, that speed and that level of impact and force, someone swinging a tool to try to get into the home is going to be very effective. And so I like that. How that actually works for people. And once again, I'm just trying to buy time. I'm trying to, buy people time. With time, anyone can actually get in.
So, you mentioned something to me earlier that I hadn't realized, and there's the film application, but some folks, evidently, some of the installers put the film on the window, but it's possible for the whole window to come out.
Right.
And talk to us a little bit about that, of how that's done right. What's that extra step that you need to do?
Right. When people are talking about getting security film, they just think about putting the film on the window. So once again, it's better than nothing. All right. But you put that film on it actually adheres to the glass. But what you actually want to do is to create a border. All right. So that border you put on around the edges of the glass. It basically adheres to the frame. All right. So otherwise you just have the film that's on the glass. When you actually put a border on there, right? So you actually put the border around the edges, it actually adheres to the frame. So now you have the glass and the film, and now the film is attached to the frame, which makes it much stronger. All right. So now it becomes an entire unit as opposed to just that piece of film sitting on the glass. You could beat it out after a while. Mm-hmm. It's still going to give you some resistance. It's going to buy you some time. But the biggest thing is that we want it to be more effective than anything. So, people, pay a little bit of extra, maybe for the thickness of the film. Doesn't really matter if you're not really trying to attach it to the frame. So
this is where, the do-it-yourself or dealing with an installer that really is not particularly knowledgeable is you can end up not getting all you should have for the product and for the price you're paying. Where just a relatively small additional investment, you're gaining a lot in effectiveness when you use that attachment system, that the border that attaches the two together. And that's important information.
Correct.
That's awesome. Very cool. So now you mentioned doors earlier. What kind of things do you do to strengthen the door, to make it? Just putting a lock on, obviously we understand that may not be the weakest point. So now you've got a bolt that goes through, but what does the bolt go into, and how do you approach a door?
The way I look at the door, once again, is as an entire unit. Some people will go out and just buy the lock and feel great about that lock. There are a lot of new locks out, right? And so the locks that are, you can have a remote for the lock, or you can, whatever biometric scanning that's on the lock. It doesn't mean anything. You need to have something that's actually really strong. You want something that's going to have a decent throw, and the throw is the bolt, right? That actually goes into the frame. That frame, when people think of a door being kicked in, they think of the door being broken. All right, the door may be broken at some point, but it's mainly the deadbolt that is being blasted through the frame. That's what's destroyed at that point. All right, so we really have to think about reinforcing that door jamb. Okay, and so starting there, reinforcing that jamb, having a decent throw. But if I go ahead and I make that door jamb strong, and I put in a deadbolt with a nice throw, the door becomes the weakest part of the entire unit. All right, so you want to make sure that you have a decent door. Depending if you're here in the Northwest, depending where you are, you're going to think about whether it's going to be a metal door as opposed to a wooden door. Even still, you want to have a decent level of thickness depending on the frame, and making sure that as an entire unit, it's a strong unit. So you want to look at the slab, you want to look at the lock, and you want to look at the door jamb. People tend to ignore the hinge side, and that's something that you should not avoid. You want the entire unit to be strong, so you should be looking at the hinge side as well as the door jamb. The door jamb, being the way that it's actually going to swing open, is more important than the hinge side, but the hinge side definitely needs to be secured as well.
So you're going to reinforce hinges, you're going to reinforce the frame itself where the bolt throws into it. And if you don't do those two things, you could put a really expensive lock on there and really not increase your security against forcible entry at all, kicking that door in.
You can spend $300-400 on a great lock, and it won't mean very much.
Exactly. Yeah, awesome information.
All right, we've been talking to Derek Dotson, the owner of Fortified Authority, and we've been talking about how to secure your home a little bit better. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we return, Derek's going to remain with us into our next segment. So stay with us, and we're going to continue to talk about your home improvements, of how you can keep your home safe. You're listening to Thinking Tactically right here on Fox Sports 1380, and remember to email us your questions at thinkingtactically@gmail.com. All right, we'll be right back.
You're listening to Thinking Tactically, personal security for today's world.
Brought to you in part by West Coast Armory North, providing expert personalized service to each individual client. For more information, log on to westcoastarmorynorth.com. Insights Training Center is locally owned and nationally recognized and offers the most complete self-defense, firearms, and tactical training available to civilians and private organizations, law enforcement, and military. In business for over 20 years, they've taught more than 20,000 private citizens, law enforcement officers, instructors, SWAT teams, corrections personnel, security officers, and military personnel, offering classes from basic self-defense and handgun safety to advanced tactic classes and everything in between. Insights Training Center has a course for you. Their professional instructors come from highly specialized and thorough backgrounds in law enforcement, military special operations, and the private sector. Visit InsightsTraining.com for a complete list of upcoming classes.
West Coast Armory North is known for its low prices and great customer service, but did you know we have training classes as well? In fact, we're introducing a new course, Handgun 101, designed with new and returning shooters in mind. Our Handgun 101 course is 3 hours long, covers handgun marksmanship, how to load, unload, and safely handle and fire a variety of handguns. All equipment is provided, and you'll leave with a free bronze membership to our range. All this for just $75. Sign up now on our website under the Classes tab at westcoastarmorynorth.com.
Every day, there are men and women of our armed forces dealing with illness and injuries, and their families are unable to be by their side. Fisher House works to get the families of injured military members to their soldiers during these difficult times. They provide housing and transportation to help make certain our soldiers are not alone. Visit fisherhouse.org to see how you can make a difference in the lives of the brave men and women of our armed forces that have sacrificed so much for us. Those of us at Thinking Tactically and West Coast Armory North are proud to support Fisher House.
You're listening to Thinking Tactically.
Personal security for today's world.
Heard every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on Fox Sports 1380. Once again, here are your hosts, John Holshin and Kevin Smith.
All right, we're back. We're still in studio. Derek Dotson is still in studio with us, talking about some home security and home protection.
So, Derek, we've been talking about measures that we can do to keep the bad guys out. And, when you're not home, that's absolutely, we want to keep them out because, burglary, we want to avoid losing our stuff. An even scarier situation is we're home and something's happening. And so we're buying some time. We're hearing them beating on the door, or we're hearing them trying to break in a window. What do we do with that time? What's the best thing? What do we need to be thinking about then?
At that time, we're looking at what type of plan we're going to implement at that point. We're looking at, it depends on the situation, too, who's in the home. We have the kids might be doing the homework. Mom is reading a book. Dad's watching television. The way it looks right now, someone was to kick in the door, the way most homes are, 99% of homes, they're not reinforced on the exterior. They're standing in your house. Even if you have the alarm is just going off as they're standing inside of the door, okay? We want that notification. So at this point, someone's trying to get into the home. The home has already been secured on the perimeter. Families at home, someone's trying to kick the door. We want to be able to activate our plan. Our plan is trying to get somewhere to the next location, all right? Safe rooms are great, but at the same time, it might just be a room. We also might want to look at having a larger safe area. So if that's moving to a different portion of the home, once we cross that threshold and there's a partition there maybe, it's going to create a second border, right? Once we get in there, the exterior has actually already been fortified, so we have more time to actually do what we need to do. And that's going to be time if we're going to call police, if we're going to move the family to the next location that's going to be secured, if we're going to arm ourselves at that point. Those are the things that we can actually do with that time, all right? Otherwise, if we're just someone's kicking the door and they end up in the house, you don't have that time. Now we've fortified the exterior. You have the time to actually do those things. People like to say, well, I have guns around the house. Well, that's great. Can you get to that gun? Can you, whatever it is that you think you might know and whatever you think you can do, you have to have the time to actually be able to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. And then, that's where alarm systems could possibly help us, right? And cameras and other things where we could start that clock that we know we have a problem and we're starting to respond even before they start trying to breach the house.
That'd be even better. All right. We would want to be able to have the notifications. Cameras are great. And that's another one of those things that people start to talk about. Hey, I'd really like to, put up some cameras. Well, okay. But if they don't have any type of notification, when I say notification, it should be able to tell you that someone is moving on the perimeter. It should have motion detection capabilities. Okay?
So that camera is actually acting like an alarm. It's just not a picture that somebody can look at. It actually tells you when you should start looking at it.
Absolutely. And so you're going to, there's a lot of great cameras that are actually out there, for iOS or Android devices. Doesn't matter. You can actually, get that notification that someone is actually moving on that perimeter. Otherwise, when you have a break-in and you have a camera, it just turns into a reality TV show of what happened. All right. We want to be able to avoid that. We want to actually be able to use that information at the time that it's happening. The thing that really people really get caught into, another one of those misconceptions, is that the cops are going to rush to your house at the time that there's an alarm. It really doesn't happen like that. The cops are so busy doing other things, and then you have an alarm go off. A lot of those alarms most of the alarms that actually happen are false alarms, all right? Especially residential alarms across the entire country. And so it's better to have that notification. When you have that notification that someone's actually either has breached your door and you're not home, someone's breached the door, and you look at that and say, hey, if you call dispatch and say someone is in my house, that's going to have a completely different reaction as opposed to someone saying, hey, my alarm's going off in my house. Can you go check? That's a different situation. And I'm telling you right now, cops are going to be extremely happy to come out there and help you if they know someone that is not supposed to be in your home is standing in there, whether you're home or not. All right. So that's something that's going to be really important. But having that earlier notification is always going to be better for you.
Excellent. So we're talking now about starting a security perimeter actually outside the home, if I understand correctly, using cameras that have the ability to recognize when there's movement in the camera view that shouldn't be there and send you some sort of notification.
Right.
Awesome. Very cool technology. So the camera itself acts as the alarm system. All right, what do you typically rely only on cameras, or what about kind of the more classic alarm type things where there's sensors on doors and windows and that sort of thing?
Sensors on doors and windows are great. If it's on a window and say the slider is actually moved up or down, left to right, that's fine, and that helps if someone actually breaches it that way. When doors are kicked or a door is opened, there's a notification that actually happens. There's an audible signal, as well as you could have a notification on your mobile device, which is also good. So if you're someplace else in the home or even outside in the backyard, the front door is open, you'd want to know that it actually opened, and that helps. Having the opportunity to do that is really good. If you have glass break sensors, people tend to always want just to get the motion detection and the doors and the windows monitored. The glass break sensors are great. And even when we talked about the security film earlier, it still picks up the frequency. Even if you have the film on the glass, it still picks up the frequency for the glass break sensors. And so once again, it's just combining these products, to make them actually a really solid, fortified, solution for you. Without that, you just start, using one or the other. It's not as helpful to be able to put that together. But putting all these things together with a proper mindset and a proper plan really helps. The way I look at it is assessing, doing the fortification, and then doing the education piece. What do you do at that time that there's an emergency? If there's an emergency, what are we doing at that point? And that's the thing that I really like to be able to focus on with people. It's one thing to fortify their home and then walk away, and that's one thing. But telling them what they should be able to do or what they can do, telling people what they can do with that new environment that they're living in, that new little fortress that they're living in, I think is it's even more empowering.
Absolutely, and that's what from my experience, is missing with a lot of the alarm companies, shall we call them. They're folks that they understand the technology. They're there to sell you a product, and that's kind of it. I have actually, in my security consulting business, I have talked to some people. Most recently, I was talking with a high net worth client that was about to spend the better part of $500,000 on securing his home and property on equipment. And when I asked him about, okay, what are you going to do when that alarm goes off? No one had talked to him about that before. It was not, the equipment was not tied into any sort of plan. When I asked him, what is the alarm company going to do when that alarm goes off? He was not informed of that. So he doesn't even know, is the alarm company going to call the police immediately? Are they going to attempt to contact the house first and rule out a false alarm? The point is that even with spending a lot more money than most of us are going to want to spend on fortifying an alarm system, it is not doing a lot for you if it is not integrated into a plan. And that is something that Derek and folks like him that do the security consulting end of it bring out, and that's where they start. And that's why I recommend Derek and people in that position to anybody that's looking at doing this sort of thing. Get somebody in there that really understands, get them to consult with you. They've got the connections to do the installations as well, if that's where you want to go. But the critical piece that they add that the installers don't is the understanding of how this fits into an overall security plan. So, Derek, we've talked about a number of different products here and different thoughts. Man, that's a lot of new information to take in, a lot to think about. Can you kind of summarize for us, kind of prioritize where you think we ought to think about this and in what order?
Absolutely, John. One of the things that people tend to do, look up this information on the internet, or they go to a town hall meeting with their local police, and the police are going to try to give them as much information as possible. But you really have to have this, the security mindset about it. You're going to hear, keep your bushes cut in front of your windows. Turn your lights on, lock your door, all right? And those are some of the simplest things that people tend to forget. I like to take it a step further and once again, just try to educate people. I want to be able to keep the bad guy out. I want to be able to keep them away from you and your family. At the time is when you're home. When you're home is the time that's actually most important, all right? When you're not home, that's what insurance is for. That's great. But when you're home, the things that I want to be able to do is keep the doors reinforced, all right? So looking at the door, once again, as an entire unit. Don't just buy a great lock, all right? Don't just buy a nice thick door. Buy a great door, buy a great lock, and reinforce the frame, all right? That's what's going to actually make that unit stronger. Looking at the windows. Windows are going to be the softest way into your residence, all right? So, hitting it with a rock or a bat or anything, it's easy for that to be able to break. So having security film is going to reinforce that very soft area, those soft spaces in your home. When you take advantage of that, you're really just those two things. You're fortifying your exterior in the greatest way. I mean, it's nice and strong at that point. Making sure that security film is actually reinforced around the edges to have the borders. Securing that film to the frame is going to make it very strong. Alarms are great, but you have to understand how to use them. I like the fact that they're noisemakers. All right, that's what I need them for. But the fact is that people become very dependent on the alarm, thinking that it's going to do some magical thing. The cops aren't going to be rushing. They're busy doing a lot of great things out there in the community, keeping people safe. So rushing to your residential alarm that might be your cat or your oscillating fan that you left on isn't high on their priority list. Okay, so making sure that your alarm works for you in the way that's possible. So if there is a breach at the residence, you want to be able to see it with a camera, right? So using cameras in the best way possible with a notification, having motion detection.
So that's just to make that perfectly clear. What Derek is saying there, the difference between a simple alarm and somebody on the phone saying, I see people at my front door trying to break in, is enormous in the police response. As an example, I own a gun store. I had an alarm go off in the middle of the night, 1 a.m. An hour and a half later, the police still were not there. Luckily, it was a malfunction in the alarm system. But when I talked to the law enforcement, I realized that, I've got cameras, but I had no way to see them from home. If I can come onto that camera, the difference between an alarm call, an hour and a half they had not arrived yet, and me being able to call 911 and say there are people breaking into my store now. It is a robbery, a burglary in progress. Law enforcement assures me their response time would have been less than 10 minutes. That's what we're talking about here, to differentiate between a simple alarm and being able to actually definitively say this is what's happening there. And you do that via the 911 call after the alarm.
Absolutely, and that definitely helps. That helps in the best way for people to be able to get there and do what they like to do best. They want to be able to help you. So I think those are some things in summary that I can really leave people with outside of just the normal things that you might hear. But these are the things that are going to keep you safe. Lastly, making sure that you have a plan. Talk about security with your family, with your spouse. Talk about them with your kids. These are things that you have to be able to talk about for it to actually be effective. You can have all the great products. You can spend all the money that you want, but if you leave the door unlocked, if you leave your garage door up, if you're doing these things that aren't going to be helpful in the long run, with all the money that you can spend $5,000, you can spend $100,000 on security. But the thing is that you want to be able to do it in a way that it's going to be most effective for your family long term. So the education piece is very important. These are things I like to be able to help people with.
Well, Derek, we really want to thank you for coming and spending your morning with us today, letting our listeners learn a lot more about what they can do to better be prepared. Do you want to let us know how people can reach out to you if they're interested in working with you or anything like that?
Absolutely. You can contact me at www.fortifiedauthority.com.
Okay. And you handle everything from residential, commercial as well, or?
Yes, absolutely. Residential. I do more residential than anything, but small businesses I've worked on as well. I've done more residences than anything, but small businesses as well. But these are things that we can, depending on whatever your goal is, I can manage it for you. A lot of these things you can do yourself, but at the same time, by the time I come into the picture, you don't have to worry about it. You're going to have reputable people, some of the best people in the industry, being able to work to solve your problem and enhance your security needs.
All right, awesome. Thank you again. We've been joined today by Derek Dotson, the owner of Fortified Authority, and thank you again for coming in.
Thanks.
It was great seeing you, Derek. Thanks.
Always good seeing you, John.
We want to thank you for joining us again this week on Thinking Tactically, Personal Security for Today's World. We've had a pleasure to get to speak with Derek Dotson, the owner of a Fortified Authority, and he's been able to provide us with some great information on how you can help secure your home, how you can keep yourself safe, whether that's with reinforcing your windows, your doors, your security systems, cameras, and all the different ways that you can try to help protect your home that isn't even just getting to a firearms type of situation where you're actually having to confront. So these are some great tips and great lessons that you can take into your everyday life and take back to your home and try to make sure that you are protecting yourself in the best way possible. We really thank him for coming out today and getting to share a little bit more about what's going on in the home security world. And remember, if you have any questions or want to learn more about the show, you can go to westcoastarmorynorth.com and check their About Us section, which has the information about the radio show and then everything else about the shop. You can also stop by West Coast Armory North right here in South Everett, and their Facebook page, if you look up West Coast Armory North, that has a lot of information about upcoming events, things going on with the show, and much more. And please feel free to email us at thinkingtactically@gmail.com. Any subjects that you want to hear about next week or any questions that you have, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. And don't forget to tune in next week. We will be discussing school security, and in particular, what's going on in the schools these days and how are they keeping our kids safe, as well as discussing active shooter again and a little bit more of how you can be prepared and what to do in an active shooter situation, along with what's in the news and your questions. Right here on Fox Sports 1380, Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. for Thinking Tactically, Personal Security for Today's World. Until next week, stay safe.